Welcome back to the Single Parent Conflict Podcast. Why conflict? Are there conflicts to being a single parent? Well, in a way, there are many conflicts. We all feel guilty when it comes to the day-to-day interactions that affect our children. My name is Demetrius. This is part 2, the continuation to our first episode where we focus on the conflicts of single mothers. We'll hear more from our guest Frances, who gives her opinion on a few questions given from parents just like you. Wherever you're listening to the Single Parent Conflict Podcast, please like, subscribe if you can, and share this with other parents. If you have a question that you want us to share our opinion on, please email contact@singleparentconflict.com. Again, that's contact, CONCACT, @singleparentconflict.com, and we'll be happy to read them on air. This is from Brian. My 14-year-old son closes his door and has a password on his devices. Should I put a camera in his room? What do you think about that?
Yeah. I remember my son when he was 14 years old, and at that time he didn't have a lock on his door. Having passwords on devices, we all have passwords on our devices, so I think that that's fine. Also, him having a lock on his door, that's fine too, because he's at that age where he needs that privacy. So that's okay. As long as you're able to knock on that door if you have a concern or anything and him be able to open the door for you, then that would be okay as well. Now, if there's something else going on other than the lock on the door and the passwords on his devices, then that would be a different question, of course.
Okay. What do you feel about not having a lock on his door? Did you have a lock on your door when you were younger?
Well, no, I didn't. Yeah. But my mom was definitely of another generation.
Yeah.
So privacy wasn't a thing in my house, not even with her. So basically, if she didn't have privacy, we didn't have privacy. That's the way it went.
Right. What about your son?
Like I said, my son, well, did I say that? My son had his own room, of course, for a very long time. And he didn't have a lock on his door for the majority of his life. But once he hit that wonderful age of 14, I learned to knock on his door, as a respectable parent should. Because you don't never want to be on the other side of that door caught with your pants down, especially a teenager, period, whether it's a young boy or a young girl or anything for that matter. You got to give them that privacy. They deserve at least some privacy.
So, right. No, it sounds like some balance there, right?
Yeah, you have to have that kind of balance because, they're at that wonderful age where they're discovering their bodies, their hormones are changing, and there's nothing wrong with that, whatever they do. And like with anything, whatever you do behind closed doors, is okay as long as it's legal.
So I should avoid just storming in my son's room.
Definitely, because what it does is it creates something. It creates a sense of a lack of trust. Okay. Because it makes them feel like, wait a minute, what's going on? Right. Startles them.
What about the passwords to the? I don't know. It was not social media. Since Jordan has a password on his devices, I think the password part is okay, right? But then I think since he's 14, I think that should parents should maybe have the passwords.
It's funny. I created my daughter's password, my youngest daughter's password, and when I want to get into any of her devices, she has the same password I created for her when she was like 13 or 14 years old. So I
think you agree with me too, because it's you can have your passwords. That's fine.
Yeah, have your passwords.
We're not going to, jump on the phones, but if stuff hits the fan, it's like, all right, well, now we need to kind of look, them. But have that privacy though.
Have that privacy, have that trust. And also your child needs to trust you as well. Not that you're going to be constantly, how would you feel if somebody's constantly looking through your stuff, guessing everything you do? I had a situation when I was really young, and a young boy that I was supposedly dating, I was really young, said something to me in a nice little letter, and it had to do with a kiss. But my mother found the letter and took it completely out of context. She didn't know English that well, so she didn't know what to think. She took it to work, and of course, making out when I was growing up, making out was a French kiss. But where the person she asked said, oh no, that's having sex. Which making out could be you know,
a little more than
a little more than a kiss. But oh my goodness, the look on her face and the disgust in mine, because I had no intention to that, you know.
Because she couldn't Google French kissing back
then. There was no
I guess.
Google back then.
Exactly. Next question. So my kid is concerned about me smoking. How do I assure them that I'll be fine?
Well, there's no way of assuring anybody that you'll be fine with or without smoking. Coming from a parent that smoked for many years and had all 3 of her children constantly tell her, ew, you stink, like cigarettes, and I didn't smoke that much. And don't smoke in the car, don't smoke in the house, don't smoke, period. It's like you hear all these don'ts when you're tired of hearing don'ts throughout your entire childhood into a young adulthood, and then finally you get that freedom to be able to maybe have a beer or have a cigarette or smoke a cigar. It's something. It does something to a person. It's like, wait a minute, I got yelled at my entire life as a kid. Now I'm getting yelled at as an adult as well for doing something that I choose to do with my own money that I work for. You know, it was annoying, but I know that in the long run they were doing it because they were concerned about my health.
Yes, that's important.
I eventually stopped smoking because of my health, and I wanted to maintain it at least a little bit. So yeah, for those people out there that have their children, tell them not to smoke. We all know that cigarette smoke is not good for us. Yeah. You know, whether it's directly us doing the smoking or if it's secondhand smoke, we already know. We've known this for like over 50 years at this point. So there's no excuse. So
as a mother who formerly smoked, now not smoking, any tips on stopping?
Well, you just have to do it. It's not like, oh, it's easy. It's not easy, but you have to make that choice. This is not like you were born smoking. You know, it's not like stopping a certain particular food or stopping to drink water. It's not, it's not like you have to do it. Cigarettes is something that you don't have to do. I know that nicotine, the cravings and the addictions are strong, very strong, much more than a lot of other things out there. But I did it because my grandson was coming to visit me for the first time. And he was only months old. And I said, I am not going to have anybody smoking in this house. I am not going to be smoking and holding him in my arms. I'm not doing that. So because I didn't do that to my own kids, I wasn't going to do that to my grandkid. And after 2 weeks of that, I said, well, if I could be 2 weeks without smoking, I'm not going to smoke ever again. And don't get me wrong, I had stopped smoking many, many years before that, 2 years in a row, because I ended up getting bronchitis once. And I said, oh no, this is going to be easy. Lo and behold, I ended up smoking for another 10, 15 years after that. Every once in a while, when springtime comes and I just want that glass of coffee, that cup of coffee with a cigarette, or I'm driving in my car on the highway and I just want to light that cigarette. Yeah. It happens. Even 8, 9 years later, it still happens. So it's not an easy thing to do, but you just got to do it. That's the only way.
And then that question was from Micah, M-I-K-A, I believe here. And so that part of how do I assure them I'll be fine? I guess that's,
you can't.
I guess we're saying that, hey, you're not going to be fine. It's not possible. You don't want to lie to your kids, right? But that's for people that smoke that don't have issues.
Right. Yeah, but you can't assure your kid you're going to be fine, like I said before, whether you smoke or not. Because you don't know what tomorrow may bring. You don't know what the next 5 seconds will bring. So
you're separating it from just smoking versus in general?
In general. Yeah. You don't make unrealistic promises that you can't keep.
All right. Well, last question. Looks like this is brought for Valerie. My foreign boyfriend says it is I and he who are the team, not children. He tells me not to go to my 2.5-year-old girl when she starts crying. What shall I do?
Now the question with that is, that's a deep one.
Yeah. Because
there's just a lot of unknowns in that question right there. First of all, it's his girlfriend, he says. Is that his child? That it doesn't say.
Right.
Okay. A 2.5-year-old, did you say?
Yep, 2.5-year-old girl when she starts crying.
All right, well, 2.5-year-old you have to pay attention to. Okay, regardless. So if it becomes a situation, you have to make a choice.
Now, what if this is, maybe this is their kid? It doesn't sound like it's their kid. What if it is their kid? Because what is that? I forget. But, when you have certain parents that are, oh, I got it. My kid's crying. Gotta go. Kid's crying. Gotta go. But then there's other parents that are like, hey, well, we have to wean them off of us. How are they going to learn that it's okay? You can cry, but then kind of cry themselves to sleep. That kind of training.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel about that?
It's hard because with all three of my kids, I had that mentality. If they're crying, it's because they're uncomfortable, they're in pain, something's going on. Because I always put myself in their shoes. Do I just cry just to cry? I know I'm not a baby, but I know that we don't, as people, we've been on this earth a lot longer than the babies have. And there are days that we just don't feel good. There are times where there's no logical explanation why we're just down in the dumps. And sometimes babies feel that. And what's going on with the parents also? Because sometimes those negative vibes, whatever's going on with the parents, can rub off on the kids. And they feel that. So there could be many reasons why, a child or a baby would be crying. But I always paid attention to my kids. Always. I never left them crying. It was always a conversation. Even if it was something simple. I understand how you feel, but you shouldn't cry over that.
Right. Well, I know that with my son, he used to love his, what do you call it? There's 80 million words from their Bobo, their Banky, their pacifier. And then when he got older and he had teeth, it was told, I think the dentist said, hey, you know what? He can't have that anymore. He can't sleep with that anymore. If he would start crying, it was like, oh, let me just give that to him. Please stop crying. Relax. But then he had to stop, and he used to go to sleep with those things. And then it came to a point where it was like, well, no, you can't sleep with this anymore. It's going to cause problems with your teeth. Not telling him that because he doesn't understand that. But in my head, that's what I'm saying. And then he would cry. And then it's like, what do? I think I was one of those that were like, okay, sure, maybe cry yourself to sleep maybe a little bit. I don't know if that's good or bad. But, there were times where I would, come see if he's okay. But he was just, crying. And sooner or later, he got used to it. Now, again, I don't know if that's good or bad or not. But it just kind of putting, shoe another foot because, your way is good too. I don't know if my way was good or not, but that's something that I did do. But that was for a different reason. And also, I was his parent. I wasn't having somebody else coming in saying, hey, you shouldn't do that to your child. So I think that the big thing with that question is, right, is that person, the foreign boyfriend, also the father? Or is this somebody coming in saying, hey, you shouldn't do that because maybe in their country they don't do that, maybe in their, and that could be difficult. So, I think there's two ways to go about it, but I think we both think that, if this person isn't the child's father, maybe just take that with a grain of salt because you're ultimately the parent. So. Right.
Yeah. And there's decisions that need to be made at that point, of course. Truthfully, like if it was with the Binky, like you said, I had to do that. My daughter was 2 when I took it away from her. She was 2, a little more than 2. And my son was a little after he was 1. Why? Because they kept on popping him.
Popping them? What do you mean popping?
They popping the Binkies because they didn't like the ones that were good for them.
Okay.
They liked the ones that were really cheap from the dollar store.
So popping, like breaking them?
Yeah, they had air inside.
And what would they do with the...
They would pull
it off and chew it?
And chew on it and pop them. And it got to a point where it was fun for them to do that. I guess it itched, their gums itched so bad that they were using it to like rub themselves with it. But at that point, I was like, listen, I've got $1 million. I'm not going to keep buying them for you to keep popping them. So it's time to go. Same thing with the bottle. But that was harder to take away. Yeah. That was harder to take away, the bottle. Because then now I had 2 children or babies that were born back to back, about 15 months apart. And I had to make sure that, if I took it away from one, I had to take it away from the other one. Right. Because then there would be a problem. And I didn't want any more problems. So, yeah, it is always a challenge when it comes to things like that.
Right.
But, we ourselves don't always feel the best. And when you have a baby, when you have a child and a toddler, they see you as their everything. So if they can't come to you for consolation, to wipe their tears and make them feel better, who can they go to? That's it. So I wouldn't be listening to somebody. Especially if it's not their child's father, and especially if they don't have children either.
It's a lot of what ifs here.
Yeah, it is a lot of what ifs with that question. And also, hey, people have opinions. You know how I feel about opinions. Everybody has them.
Do you just feel that way? I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah. They all stink. Okay. That's what I say.
I want to thank Frances again for sharing her opinions on the show. If you liked anything about this podcast, please like, subscribe if you can, and share this episode with other parents that you know. And we'll be back with another episode here on the Single Parents Conflict Podcast.